to introduce our final speaker. How many in the audience today are either going through or thinking about or have some faraway thoughts about clubhouse or other structural renovation at your club? Good. Well, we're not going to go play golf yet then. So with that, I'm going to introduce Peter Carafo. Peter is the Senior Vice President for Judd Designs and the Jefferson Group architecture firms. They've been assisting clubs with clubhouse master planning, architecture, and design for 35 years. Peter was supposed to be joined here by his partner, Albert Constantini. Albert and Peter just worked through a major renovation at Canoe Brook, but Albert couldn't be here today. So, Peter's got a lot of responsibilities, but he's very busy tracking trends in the industry, and he's got some good comparative data as to what other clubs are doing, and he's here to help, and I'm sure you're going to find it very interesting. Please welcome Peter to the podium.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the MGA. First of all, I'd like to express my friend and associate Albert's regrets for not being able to be here. He had a death in the family, and as a result, he's really disappointed that he wasn't able to be here with everybody. Since most of my presentation is already done, I'm going to go back a little bit here, if I can. Doesn't seem to want me to. That's interesting. Come on.
Red button.
Okay, try it. Red button goes back?
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, it's not happening. Anyway, unfortunately, Albert was supposed to do all the heavy lifting today, so, you know, I've been asked to, in the interest of schedule, pare this down, so 4 or 5 hours, and we should have you out of here. As said, I'm Peter Carafo with Judd Designs and Jefferson Group Architecture. Albert is the General Manager and Chief Operating Officer for Canoe Brook. I'm going to tell you a little bit just about some factoids about my firms and about Canoe Brook, and then we'll get into talking a little bit about renovations. The original plan was to do theory and practice. This is what's supposed to happen. This is what really happens. I will do my best to try to communicate some of what really happens and show you some examples of Canoe Brook's actual program. Since you've had plenty of time to look at this slide, I'm going to go right past it. And I was also going to ask who amongst you has either finished the renovation over the last year or is in the middle of one, but that's already done also, so we'll just keep on going. Canoe Brook was founded in 1901. They're down in Summit in Millburn, New Jersey. They're actually, and there's somebody from Canoe Brook back there. If you want to add anything, please feel free. Also, I'm happy to make this interactive. If anybody has any questions or comments during the presentation, by all means, just say something, raise your hand, yell, scream, jump up and down. They have 18 holes. Each golf course is in a different county. Imagine how much fun that must be. Pool, fitness, tennis, paddle. 576 proprietary members. Total user population, and that's really the number that counts. We all know that what's happened in clubs over the last 5, 10, 15 years has been a switch from the individual golfer to family. So it's the effective number of members that's really important, the people that actually use your facility. And it's a little bit about their dues and their F&B. See, they've done very well. They went from about a $2.1 million annual F&B revenue to about $4.4 million in 18 months, and that was following the completion of the renovation. So, who needs a renovation? There are a number of different ways to figure out whether or not you need your renovation. You're all golf professionals. You're either part of leadership of the club or general management. So you kind of get a sense. You can look at the facility and say, well, things are falling apart. Air conditioning is not working. You can look at your food and beverage revenue. You can look at your membership. No one of those factors will tell the whole story, but if you look at it all together, you'll probably figure out if your membership is declining or is not increasing the way it should, and your food and beverage revenues are down, and your general member satisfaction is not up there. There's some sort of problem. And oftentimes, that problem could be with the infrastructure. We all know what many of the trends have been: fitness, quality dining choices, bars. Everybody wants a bar. The bar is probably the single most popular item that we've been adding to our project, in the projects that we're working on. Canoe Brook, that project started with a $500,000 member bar and ended up with a $22 million total renovation. So just let me know if you're happy to come and make that happen in your club too. Everybody knows the real trends. There are a couple of things that we've noticed with trends that have affected how we do projects, and I think how Canoe Brook did their project was paying attention to this, and that is that decisions are no longer made in a vacuum by the board of directors in a smoky room saying the membership doesn't need to know about that, doesn't matter. Transparency. Transparency is key. Communications, asking the members what they're looking for, telling them what's going on. Without doing that, you're going to have issues. The other is, most of the projects that we come in to fix what has been a mishmash of additions over the years. The trend of, and everybody's smiling up there because you can all identify with that, the trend of each administration wanting to make their mark on their clubhouse and on their golf course is going away. And most of the clubs now are dealing with long-range plans. Master planning for golf courses became very important a number of years ago, and now master planning for private clubs, for the clubhouse is equally as important in that it creates a roadmap. Do clubs finish every master plan? Some do, some don't. It depends on how long they're planning for. But to have a plan, to have a roadmap, enables the club to stay consistent in their appearance and continue and practicing continuous improvement. Canoe Brook. These are some of Canoe Brook's slides from back when they did their presentation. The process started in 2012. Actually, the member vote was in 2012. It started at the end of 2010 into 2011, where we were asked to design a member bar. And one thing led to another, and we ended up doing a full-blown master plan, member presentations, town hall meetings, etc. And some of these slides are part of the presentations that they made. Some of the factors that they used had to do with the appearance of the club, as well as the infrastructure. And when doing a project like this, the appearance is clear. Your members aren't thrilled, they're not excited, they're not having their memorable events there. Infrastructure sometimes is a little more difficult to deal with. But ask your facilities people, your maintenance guys, check out the temperature in the ballroom, and you can get a sense of where your infrastructure is at. Some of the challenges that Canoe Brook, and by the way, this was Albert's part, just so you know. The mechanicals were out of date. The kitchen couldn't support the needs. One of the things you need to pay attention to is when we do programs like this, oftentimes we're touting increased revenue, food and beverage revenue. Most of the projects we've been worked on, and even the ones that anecdotally I have spoken to managers and leaders, you're usually seeing anywhere from a 25 to 40% increase in food and beverage revenue. Well, we have to make sure that the back of the house can handle that. If the kitchen is having a difficult time with throughput now, maintaining your high-level member satisfaction, it's not going to help to add 35 to 40% more food and beverage revenue to them because they're only going to find themselves with more trouble. So you really have to make sure that you have the proper kitchen laid out the right way for the menu that you are anticipating. When you start the process, remember your GM is your first club professional. That person has been in the business, he or she, for a very long time. They go to classes, both locally and nationally, regularly. Count on them. Ask them for their input. They know the players. They know who should be involved. Understand the process and understand your goal. Also understand that you're not going to get everything you want. Like the song says, you get what you need. Communication. Going back to the smoky back room with the board of directors, doesn't work anymore. Make sure you communicate completely. Use professional consultants. There are a lot of people that do what we do. There are some local and regional companies. There are a number of national firms. We have a great relationship with all of our competitors. I would highly urge you to get a couple of them in a room and talk to them before you go down the path. Understand the scope. Know your numbers. When you go into this, you need to know what your volumes are, your capacities, your number of lockers, number of seats, etc., and so forth. Begin to assemble this information in advance of going forward with a renovation, especially if you're going to go through the process of master planning. Understand your bylaws. There are going to be meetings, there are going to be presentations, there are going to be votes, there's going to be lots of things. I don't think I've ever been in a member presentation where somebody who's typically a naysayer for the project doesn't stand up and say, this violates our bylaws. It typically doesn't, but somebody's always ready to challenge the bylaws. Go through the interview process and the proposal process with clear, consistent deliverables. Understand what your expectations are, communicate those expectations to the proper consultants, and ask them to propose and interview with those goals in mind. I'm going to talk a little bit again about Canoe Brook. In identifying and understanding their goals, some of the things they did was put together a list of their shortcomings. No single main entrance. Club had multiple different levels. The kitchen couldn't handle the capacity that was already at. There was a limited capacity to hold large events. They only had 4 weddings in 2011. In 2015, they had 16 weddings. Now, I don't necessarily promote clubs to be in the wedding business, but of those 16 weddings, 15 were members. Weddings and other memorable family events are part of the membership driver, just like a great golf course and a pool and paddle tennis. They came up with a knockdown cost to do it over again, $25 to $30 million. We recommend that any master plan begins with the members and ends with the members. Remember, you're going to ask the membership to pay for it. One way or the other, whether it's through increased dues, the A word, that we typically don't like to use, we want to call it capital contribution, something very nice and soft. Never use that A word. Try not to. Start by gathering information, whether it's through focus groups or membership surveys. Dr. Jarvis talked about data. And it's not big data, but it's important data. Survey your members, do focus groups. Ask them what they want before you begin to give them what you think they want. Communicate to the members. The president needs to be in communication. The president needs to write letters and tell the members what's going on. We need member input. We have to understand the culture in order to get a successful program passed, and that is the goal, get it approved. You need to understand each individual club's culture. And although about 80% of what I see in private clubs is pretty much the same as all of the other ones, that 20% that differentiates you is very, very important. So you have to understand the subtleties that differentiate your club's culture. Get input from your department heads. This relates more to infrastructure. The department heads understand what the flow issues are, what the HVAC issues are, what plumbing and electrical issues they may have, what types of constant maintenance they're putting in to the club. These are some of Canoe Brook's research findings. They determined that the club they wanted to have their clubhouse match their great golf course. They wanted to be architecturally significant. They wanted a first-class dining experience. Elegant, intimate, formal dining. A little word on formal dining. It's not right for every club. It shouldn't be your primary dining facility. You should evaluate formal before you embark upon it to make sure it's not just a small group of members, typically older members, that want it as a throwback to their old culture. Upscale, adult dining and lounge. There it is. That's the one. I have yet to be in a set of focus groups over the last couple of years where that hasn't come out at the top of what people are looking for. I want a place to go. I want a place to go with my wife after we play golf. I want a place to meet my friends. I want a place to bring my business associates. I want a place to watch the game. I want a comfortable place. Family dining. Today's club needs a dining complex made up of 4 elements. The bar, the adult dining, the family dining, and the outdoor dining. And all of that should be connected in some way. Shouldn't be the same space, but it should be in the same space so you're not making any group of your members feel like they're second-class citizens and having to go in through a different door or sit with a different group of people. These are all the things that Canoe Brook wanted to accomplish. They wanted to be able to hold large member events, and they wanted to have a kitchen facility that could support all of this. Again, we're jumping around a little bit, we're sort of applying the process to the specifics of Canoe Brook. It would be, if Albert were here, you'd get it more easily. I'm gonna have to give him a hard time. The process, and again, start with members and members. Have a committee. Do not have a big committee. You do not need 15 or 18 people, because you'll only get about 8 at every meeting anyway, and my guess is it'll be a different 8 at each meeting, and you'll never get anything done. 6 or 8 people, manageable, committed, respected members, cross demographics of membership, women, non-golf members. You do not have to populate the committee with architects, builders, and interior designers. As a matter of fact, you probably shouldn't populate it with those people. In the situations where we have seen committees populated with those, things take a lot longer to get done. Here was the long-range plan at Canoe Brook. They formed the committee back in November of 2010. You see there was the president, 2 co-chairs, and then a group of members made up of a number of different demographics. Keep something in mind that the committee, especially the chair and the president, that is going to guide the master plan through to its fruition are going to work very hard. They're going to be big-time cheerleaders. They have to really push this program, and our recommendation is that that committee ends their responsibility the day of the vote of the master plan, because it's so much work. You want a different group of people to take over, and assuming the master plan is approved by your members, a different group of members take it over and shepherd it through the rest of the process. Before I go on, does anybody have any questions about what we've done so far? All right, you either fall asleep or doing okay. Or maybe just boring. Planning. Process starts and ends with the members once again. Typically, there's no one solution to a project at a club. There are multiple, so we start with options. And we usually start without a budget in mind. Now, some of you may say, well, that's unrealistic. Everybody's got a budget. Yes, everybody's got a budget, and they're all too small. But in order to really get the creative juices flowing and to really show the committee what can be done, we start off without focusing on budget, but rather focusing on satisfying the goals that have been established either through the focus groups or through the member survey. Inevitably, we're going to pare it back. We're going to figure out what has to be eliminated and what stays. But the only way you can get a true vision for what the future of your club could be is to let everything out in that first step and see it all on paper. Where can we go? It also gives the committee a much better sense of the impact of budget and what they can and cannot get. Because inevitably everybody's, the while we're at it scenario always goes, well, while we're at it, let's just add another building over there. Once they get a sense of what things cost up front, they're a little more conscious of that sort of thing. We go through a number of options. There's always revisions, multiple revisions. Master planning should be an iterative process. The first solution should not be the last solution. It should work, the committee should be involved. It's typically about 1 meeting a month with the consultant, and then at least another meeting or so in the process without the consultant per month. The deliverables end up being site plans, floor plans, renderings. Colors? No. We tend to leave colors out. Colors are emotional. Members will stand up and say, I don't like blue, therefore I'm voting against the program. We don't want that. Budgeting and the finance plan. When you go to your membership, you have to answer 3 fundamental questions. If you don't answer all 3 at the same time, you are risking failure. What are you doing? Those are your floor plans, your elevations, your eye candy, the renderings, the pretty stuff. How much is it going to cost? That's the budget that your consultant comes up with, and then hopefully goes to a local contractor or two and asks them to give some input on, albeit a rather loose set of drawings. They barely qualify as drawings, they're just concepts at this point. But they can apply allowances and experience to that, give you some budgets, and the all-important, how are we going to pay for it? The big number, the $2 million, $5 million, $20 million, if you live in Florida, $80 million projects, seem very expensive. That's not the number we want to focus on. We want to focus on the cost per member. And most clubs today are doing it over a period of time, using bank financing or some other vehicle, and then having the monthly member payment add up to, based on a model of full-time equivalents that bills in normal attrition plus some additional attrition up front. And that's how they figure out how they're going to pay for it. And I would say that most projects we're doing today have a lot more to do with non-golfers than golfers. Even though the what goes on in the clubhouse is an integral part of the golf experience, it is not always perceived as such by your golfers. So do not be afraid to spread the cost amongst all member categories. As a matter of fact, many of your clubs may be losing out on boosting your membership through non-golfers, especially if you have a golf course that's already stressed. You're at the level where you do not want to introduce tee times. You want to be careful, but yet you feel as though there's more capacity at the club. Well, you can increase your capacity through non-golf members, especially if you're improving your non-golf facilities. This is just some examples of Canoe Brook's master plan. This is the type of presentation that the members would see. We did a more detailed kitchen plan for this project than we would typically do for a master plan because their kitchen was in such disrepair and ended up being a centerpiece of the project. Second story, they added guest rooms, which we're seeing a lot of inquiries on guest rooms now. A number of local clubs have either added them or renovated them lately in an attempt to improve the general membership experience. Do you make money from guest rooms? If it were a standalone business, my guess would be no. But remember, it's all about engaging members, making sure that you have plenty of people paying dues, paying their initiation fee, and you always want people to join your club. So if guest rooms are a driver, and you think that will drive people to join your club, then by all means consider it. Once the committee has determined what the project is going to be, it's their job to then recommend it to the board of directors. We may differ from some of our honored competitors in what we recommend. We do not believe that the board of directors should be the committee. As a matter of fact, we don't think the committee should be made up of a whole bunch of past presidents. We think the committee should be a standalone, member-driven committee. Again, cross demographics. There should be a board of directors member as a chair of the committee. Most of your bylaws require that anyway. And that person is the liaison with the board. Once the committee has determined what their final recommendation is, they recommend it goes to the board. The board then has the opportunity to approve it, reject it, which typically doesn't happen, or potentially make a couple of tweaks before it goes to the members. Once the board has approved it, it goes on to the members. Now, one of the little pieces of advice for those of you who are about to go through this or are going through it now, you need to be able to have a good, open conversation with your board. Not every member of your board may vote for this, but you've really got to specifically speak with them that if they choose not to vote for it, that's fine, but if the board approves it, they need to be on board. Because one of the quickest ways to derail a project vis-a-vis membership approval is if it gets out that there are key board members that are opposed to it and they're voicing their opinions amongst the members. So it's really incumbent upon the club president, the committee chairs, to impress upon their fellow board members that even if you voted against it, go with the majority and try to support it. Canoe Brook had a number of member information sessions. Those are very important. Typically, once the board approves it, before we go to a membership vote, we typically would do either focus groups or town hall meetings whereby we could get feedback from the members. We want to try not to go to the membership for a vote unless we're fairly certain that it's going to be approved. in focus groups and information sessions, we would typically give attendees a survey to complete, whereby we break down the program into parcels and ask them to determine the level of importance of each one, so that way we can determine whether or not the project is proper and whether or not it should go to the membership as is, or whether there should be some modifications made to it. These are specific to Canoe Brook. They want a 20-year term. They wanted to offer prepayment options. Senior consideration, which is absolutely necessary. Your biggest pushback for a clubhouse project is going to be amongst your seniors. They're not going to be happy about spending money on something that they perceive to not get any use out of. One of the things that it's important to remember, to remind seniors and those other golfers who don't feel, I think it's Freudian slip there, those other members who don't feel as though they're going to get any benefit, is when they join the club not just to play golf and not just to use it up. They could have done that at a daily fee course. They have, I believe that members of private clubs have a responsibility to leave their club better than they found it for the next generation, unless they don't want to see their club survive another generation or two. Yeah.
Comment on the prepayment options, you're saying several?
Right. When I mentioned how many clubs are financing these things, typically they're going to a bank, they're getting a loan for a period of time. Now, the period of time should be somewhat commensurate with the invasiveness of the project. If you're repapering a room, don't think you're going to finance it for 10 years. If you're building a brand new clubhouse, then don't think you have to finance it for 5 or 7 years, because you have the opportunity to stretch it out quite a bit longer than that. So we come up with that program. It's a monthly payment. We would typically recommend that the club offers prepayment. The advantage of that is you can discount it, usually 5 or 10%, one payment or two payments up front. That provides you valuable seed money. It changes the finance model so as to put it on a more rapid payoff schedule. The disadvantage to that, and it's a small disadvantage, is that it puts in the member's face the total sum of their, not the A word, capital contribution. So if you've got 15 years at $100 a month, it's $1,200 a year, times 15 years, my math isn't very good. You put that lump sum number out there, and they're going to all of a sudden realize, oh my God, I'm paying $12,000 as opposed to $100 a month. So there is some risk in that, but our recommendation is there are people out there that would rather just get it out of the way, pay it up front, take the discount, and move on. So it's on a per club basis, you have to determine which is right for your particular situation. So anyway, these were the contents of Canoe Brook's master plan. We'll make a presentation, focus groups. After the focus groups, we typically make a few minor revisions. Believe it or not, more times than not, things actually get added after focus groups. Because we realized that there were things that the members don't see. They're small things usually, that they say, well, if we're doing all this, why aren't we doing that? And that's the time to consider it. So we oftentimes add things, we sometimes reallocate. We prepare the final documents. We produce, or help the club produce a collateral publication, a brochure, if you will, that gets mailed to all the members. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the role of the committee chair and the president is really as cheerleaders. They lead it. When we do focus groups, we typically are the people presenting, and we ask the club, the committee chair or the president, whomever, or the finance chair, to be there to support us and to provide the financial model portion of the presentation. When we get to the member presentation, that reverses. And we ask the president and the committee chairs to really be running the whole presentation. And we as consultants are there to support them and talk about specifics of the project and to answer questions. It's really got a better chance of approval if the group of members is listening to their fellow members and how excited they are about this project and how much they want it to happen, not necessarily a group of outside consultants. Some of us have a vested interest in it passing. Typically, when we are involved in a master plan, more times than not, we're asked to do the architecture and interior design. So we really want to make sure that it's come from the members, so that it's all about pride in the club and the determination of what needs to be done to make the club continue. Go to the member presentation, and then you go to a vote. This is some of the examples of Canoe Brook's documentation that went to the membership. They created a great presentation with before and after. These are not photos, these are renderings, but the images on the lower level are photos. You can see the dramatic change, or the proposed dramatic change. If you talk to your members just with floor plans and budgets, you're going to bore them to tears. You got to show them the eye candy. You have to get them excited. And this is how you get them excited. What a great new pool facility. We didn't talk much about specific trends, but certainly if you have an aging pool facility, you are in need of an update. There aren't many, we all know that women, moms, are a big part of the decision-making process of where to join a club. There aren't many moms that are going to walk into a pool locker room and go, ew, and say, yeah, but this is really where I want to join. So pay attention to your pool and your pool locker rooms and those areas that are going to be family-oriented. They will have a big impact on member satisfaction and member attraction. Again, some images, some renderings. You can see this was a big project. There were a lot of renderings that were done, interior renderings and exterior renderings. This is where Albert would be elaborating on all of these spaces, something that I am not able to do. My apologies. Here are some other slides from Canoe Brook's membership presentation. They did 2 phases of construction as part of the original master plan, valued at around $15 million. Prior to the start of construction phase 2, we went to the membership and asked them for another $5.5 million to do the pool facility and some other ancillary buildings. The original master plan, phase 1 and 2, passed by a slim margin, very slim, but it passed. And there was a commitment by leadership in the club to get it done because they knew that the future of the club depended upon doing the project. Phase 3, which was the pool building, which was put in front of the members, as I said, between phase 1 and phase 2, passed somewhere around 90% approval. Mostly because phase 1 had opened. Phase 1 contained the 1901 Tavern, which has sort of become the quintessential example of a member bar and grill. It's the facility that every club I go to points at and says, we want that. That's what we want in our club. Doesn't have to look like that, it's got to feel like that. That was done. Members are using it. They approved the pool facility and the rest of the work almost unanimously. You can see the project budget there at just about $15 million. Now, in that, there was some contingency. Some of the things that they added, they decided to add. This was right after, right after that, the winter of discontent, where we got about 6 feet of snow down here, and they were out of electricity quite often, so they decided to put in a generator. Partially, obviously, to run the club, but also because they felt that in order to really be the community club that they wanted to be, they should be a refuge. When their members don't have electricity, there would be somewhere for them to come to get a hot meal, charge their cell phone, get some work done. This was what they were asking their members to commit. As you can see, the question, Carl, you asked about the one-time payment options are illustrated up there.
Question?
Yeah.
So, one-time payment option, it's great until you go through a 2008, 2009 cycle where you lose a lot of members.
Mm-hmm.
And so, all this is built on assumptions. And if someone makes the one-time payment and adjustment, but then you lose a large swath of your membership, it sort of comes down to last man standing. All right, we made the one sunset, I don't have to pay anyone else. And then it's left to everybody else. So
Right.
have you found situations where that actually backfires?
We haven't found it where it backfires. I will, as an aside to that, typically, the one-time payment is prorated, is refundable on a prorated basis. So if the member has to leave for a legitimate reason, they would actually get the unused
Well,
portion
I'm not
back.
talking about him leaving, I'm
Right.
talking about the
But,
other guy.
we have not seen that happen. Many of these projects have happened since 2008. So that begs the question, the 23,000 or just about, I don't know the time it is, it might be there already. What's going to happen next? Everybody's forecasting the bubble. Is it going to burst? Well, you have to forecast based on something. When we build the models, we typically recommend that the club builds the models, build a model in a very conservative way. Typically, every club has attrition. 5% a year, 3% a year, whatever. It varies up and down. At the very least, we ask the club to build a model on double normal attrition, because are going to have members that are going to back out. They just can't afford it. They don't want to be there anymore. But you also have to get your financial minds. At every club, one of the benefits of the population of most private clubs is you have a big group of finance people, especially when you're in the tri-state area here. Lots of people that understand finance. You've got to get them involved, and you've got to do some prognostication and try to build a model that isn't depression-proof, but maybe recession-resistant, that can still survive. Now, this comes up oftentimes at our member presentations. What happens if 2008 happens all over again? Well, I would beg the question to the membership, if you do absolutely nothing to your club, and you stay right where you are, and we have another 2008, 2009, where do you think you're going to be 2 years later? If you spend money and add the new members that every single club that has done a project has added. Somebody came up to me earlier today and said, oh, was that your presentation when you presented right after the renovation at Canoe Brook? We did a workshop down there, and my club copied everything you did, and we've gained 60 new members. I beg to say that that is not the exception. That's the rule. You gain new members. So I think you have to be less concerned about how do you pay for it if you have a downturn, and more concerned with what is the better position to be in the event of a downturn, one where you're scraping by or one where you actually are flush with members. I know that doesn't really answer your question because I really don't have any specific experience as to what those prepaid members would do in that event. But again, the models are typically built conservatively to allow for that type of thing. Most of your financial institutions, if you're going to do it through a bank, you have a good relationship with your bank. Most of the loan-to-value ratios for a private club are going to be extremely small, 25, 30%. It goes back to the basis upon which the state of New York is trying to tax you, whether it's on its existing use or whether it's on its potential use. So you can make a case for a very low loan-to-value ratio. So if you get into a difficult situation, will your bank be willing to do interest only for a couple of years? I can't say yes or no, but I would think that's something you want to have, there's a discussion you want to have with them up front, if they would be willing to transition to an interest-only deal for a couple of years.
How many members do they lose after the first one? Well, they just barely got through.
But memory serves, though they absolutely had attrition, I think they probably lost 40 or 50 members. If you know, by all means, jump in. But if they lost a large number of members. However, the other side of the story is, as soon as they put the shovel in the ground, they got new members and they actually went to a waiting list. Inquiring members, when asked why you're joining now, the project isn't even done, barely even started, they said, we know there's going to be a waiting list here and we don't want to be on it. So they're willing to join earlier. There was, yeah.
Yes, the slide you had a few minutes ago talked about a 20-year financing. We did a renovation about 7-8 years ago, and in looking to refinance what had been a 20-year mortgage, we found that in the current bank environment, despite the low LTV, very few of the banks, in fact none that we've found, are willing to go beyond 10 years. Is your experience that clubs have been able to finance these at longer term?
What we found is, and I mean, full disclosure, I am not a financial expert, okay? But this is all anecdotal in what we found in other clubs. What banks are willing to do is do a 10-year, do a 20-year amortization, 10-year refi. So yes, so you're subject to do some uncertainty in 10 years. So that's the reality of the situation, yes. If you can figure out how to keep it inside of 10 years, you're definitely better off. And the clubs with larger memberships, it's just a math equation. The clubs with larger memberships have a better chance of keeping the finance term within that period. So, because you're dividing it just by more people. Now, one thing I would caution you, and that we caution all our clients, you know, if somebody always says, well, if you're anticipating you're going to have a 25, 30, 40% increase in food and beverage revenues, we're going to add more members, which means more initiation fees, blah, blah, blah. Why don't we build that into the model? No. That is the sort of thing that allows you to pay the project down faster. When you accomplish the goals that you believe a program like this is going to fulfill, then you use those accomplishments or the revenue that comes from those accomplishments to accelerate your payment. Because we all know that within 10 years, something else is going to need to be done, whether it's an irrigation system, whether it's some new tractors or whatever. And although we encourage clubs to have capital contributions on an ongoing basis, we all know that these big things, that the big things come along and they don't always, they aren't always satisfied fully by the monthly capital contributions.
Yeah, Peter, just a couple quick things. One, we just refinanced. We're about nine years past $15 million renovation. We were able to find two different banks to finance a 20-year piece. Happy to share that information with you as well. Post 9 years, including 2008, 2009, just when we launched, a couple quick comments. One, the prepaid piece really blew up in our face pretty hard, especially with the financial downturn. We're trying to accelerate back out of that. We had members who took their prepayment option and wanted to be paid early, and then we ran into financial troubles, which we needed more debt financing, which just created an incredible problem. So the four key things that we tell people now when they come to us and ask us about our renovation was first, if we had followed a lot of the advice that Peter gave early in this process, we would have directly avoided a lot of the problems that we ended up with. So, full disclosure, we just hired Peter on a project at our firm, but us doing a couple things, including utilizing professionals who are members of the membership in the process, are directly attributable to some of the key problems that we have 9 years later with the program. The second is what Peter was just talking about, the financial plan. We talked about the conservative nature of it. If we go back and look at the financial projections that we put out to what our food and beverage and our membership was going to be because of this wonderful new $15 million clubhouse, they just didn't come real.
Really?
And yeah, and especially if you look at, there's no way they could come real for two reasons. One, the downturn that happened. The second is the analysis was never put on the back end of the house that you said up front, right? Make sure you can get the throughput through what you're building. The analysis looked at the front end, the ability to attract revenue, but then the ability to deliver it. And it's something that we just missed, but it was a big miss. The third piece that we talk about is we will never ever follow the program that you just put up there about selling memberships that we're going to finance it downstream and just show them to what their contribution is on a monthly basis. It doesn't work for long-term member satisfaction in our estimation, and this is just an opinion. Banks are very willing to put the mortgage piece out. It puts another burden on your treasurer and your board that now they have to manage finance commitments. In the 9 years, we have refinanced our loan over 3 times, taking advantage of different interest rates, avoiding interest rate triggers that were downstream that were going to cost us the net effect of 2 or 3 memberships as we get down. And then the last piece that we would advise or advise clubs to come and talk to us about our organization is things get old quick. It is unbelievable how things we designed just 10 years ago have absolutely no applicability to our membership or for us to sell our club. And the ability we would have been much better off suited spending much less upfront and creating budgets every year for constant innovation, constant change in our dining and golf programs. And that's our feedback.
Well, first of all, That's great information. I thank you for that, because you don't always hear the whole story from someone. So that's great. I think a couple of things happened with you guys. When I talk about doing a master plan, you don't necessarily have to do it in a single phase. In fact, most clubs plan it out over time. You sort of had a double whammy there, or actually a triple whammy. The two that you already said that you did it at kind of a tough time. But also, what we've noticed is that several of the clubs that we're doing master plans with now that had renovations done between 8 and 10 years ago, my feeling is that about that period there was a sort of state of flux of where clubs were going, and where clubs were going hadn't fully gelled. They were becoming family clubs, but they hadn't fully become family clubs. So when you're creating that dining complex, most clubs were putting in bars because everybody wanted a bar, but they were putting it in a separate room. Now, I don't know if any of this applies specifically to your club. They're putting it in a separate room, and they're sort of breaking up the facility so that everybody has their space. And as things have come around now and sort of fully developed, and somebody's going to say, well, what's going to happen 10 years from now? My guess is things will be a little different. But we're doing our best guess as far as where we are and where we think we're going to be. Now it's more a function of everybody wants to be in a single space, everybody wants to be together. She's standing up. Yeah, she is. You know, at the Oscars, they play the music. They're not playing the music. All right, I'm going to go through the last few slides here, show you some pretty pictures, and then we'll take whatever other questions you want, and we'll go from there. Because I do not want to interrupt lunch, or more importantly, golf. These are, I'm sorry, I was going a little fast on these. These are actual finished product. The top is the photo of today's product, the bottom is what it was, from generally the same angles. If you remember back to when we had the renderings up there, they look pretty similar. I could go on. This is the 1901 Tavern, again, the quintessential adult casual bar. I could go on for, as you probably figured, about 2 hours with stories and recommendations and things like that, but I will not do that today. We're going to show you as a final slide, where hopefully this video is going to play. We just had this made with ourselves and the contractor, Donnelly Construction, and the club. This takes you through the existing clubhouse. It's only about 2.5 minutes.